All right, everybody. Today we are here with Dr. Ogi Ogas. So, welcome in to the Gnostic Chats. This is a podcast where we'll delve into the depths of knowledge and explore the mysteries of the human experience. Today is a very special guest for my number one podcast. We've got Dr. Ogi Ogas. How are you today, sir?
I'm very happy. I'm delighted to be here with you, James.
Awesome. Yeah, I thought we'd just go into like an introduction, maybe do some of your background, talk about these books that you've written, and then get into this channel that you started, the Dark Gift. It's definitely an interesting topic I thought we could delve into.
Sure.
And then so
Excited.
can we like briefly go and maybe provide us an overview or a background of your books that you've got out there?
Sure. Well, I'm a neuroscientist and a writer, a scientist and an artist. So I take both of those very seriously in my life. I'm a mathematical neuroscientist, so the way I approach the brain is through the lens of math and try to understand the mind mathematically. And I've written a number of nonfiction books, but I also, when I was younger, made films, and now I'm working on some novels. So I've always tried to merge together art and science, especially in the form of the mind, since the mind's involved in both neuroscience and writing and art. So I'd really say that I'm someone that loves studying and exploring the mind from every possible angle. Uh, I've written about, I think I've got 7 books published, uh, all nonfiction, usually about the mind.
Yeah, and this man's books and works are awesome. I actually stumbled across you from Michael Levin. He had posted on Twitter a list of books that he thought you should maybe get involved with or read, and your name was on that list. And so that's how I found your name. And then it
Oh,
was Journey
cool.
of the Mind that he had recommended, and what a
Oh, that's great.
recommendation! Yeah. Then what motivated you, or to get into? I mean, I'd ask what motivated you to get into the topic of autism, but it does say online that you have an autism or a you're on the spectrum
Yes,
in some sort.
I'm autistic. I mean, that's certainly one of the big motivations for learning about the mind. I mean, even when I was young, I didn't realize I was autistic until my mid to late 20s. And my interest in the mind certainly started before I realized I had autism, but I always knew there was something strange about my brain. So all my life, it was clear my brain's different than other people's. And even though I didn't know it was autism until I got to grad school, um, that certainly the feeling that there's something different about me, the way I think is different, was a powerful impetus to study the mind and try to learn about it.
Right. Seems like people that I meet that I speak with that have autism have a higher level of compassion. It's a unique position for sure. The idea of it being a dark gift, in which way do you mean so?
Yes, I call the autism a dark gift. Uh, I call it dark because it does have cause a lot of problems. There's a lot of difficulties for someone with autism. I have trouble speaking, reading, writing, doing math at time. Certainly, social situations I'm particularly troubled by. I'm not at all good at social situations, especially in groups of people. With casual conversation, I'm just terrible at that. Small talk and small chit chat, I just have no ability to do that whatsoever as a result of my autism. I've gotten better over the years and I can manage it, but I'm still far from even a mediocre ability at that. I often say that my real-time skills are bad. So as long as I have a lot of time to manage something or respond to something, I can do it. But talking to people like right now in real time is usually where my brain often stumbles and gets stuck.
Well, you seem to be doing fine. The idea of us being social butterflies too has got to be growing up. I imagine that must have been kind of difficult to maybe kind of navigate through school and such. Was that a
So yes, I mean I enjoy socializing, and when I was young, again, I didn't know I had that. What I had was autism, and I liked people, I liked friends, and so I always was trying to have friends. I was certainly not a wallflower or somebody that stayed home. But quickly I learned by the time I finished high school, I just had endless problems with friends, with teachers. I got detentions and got in trouble at school a lot, those sorts of things, and that those troubles continued in college. So it was clear that there was something wrong with my ability to socialize. When I was younger, I didn't put it on that I had a broken brain. I just kept thinking I'm doing something wrong,
Mm.
or there's something they see I don't. I just got to learn this, or I couldn't understand exactly what was going on. But once I discovered I had autism, then suddenly it all became clear what was, what the culprit was.
Right. It's almost like for me, if I was cooking a dish or trying to replicate a dish, and then I didn't know that there was a secret ingredient, I would probably take forever for me to figure it out how to make the dish. So I could totally see how that would be an issue or something you've ran into. The idea of autism, the some say genetics and some say other circumstances. Would you say that it's something that can be maybe like changed or somehow manipulated through like your journey of becoming older, going through the progressions, or is there any locking in that you think there is associated with autism?
Yes, and let me answer that. And to set up that, let me finish answering you. You would ask why I call it the dark gift, and I explain the
Oh, great.
darkness. Let me explain the gift part because this will relate to my ideas about autism. The other part of autism for me is it's a gift. So even though there's a darkness, it causes these problems, especially socializing, real time kinds of thinking problems. Uh, it also has bestowed upon me two main gifts. I can learn massive quantities of information very quickly and keep it in mind for a period of time, not forever. I call this super learning, and it also allows me to focus. My autism allows me to focus intensely on a subject for a long time. I mean, that can be a problem too. That can have downsides, but it allows me to stick with things with an intensity and focus that non-autistic people usually don't seem to be able to do. It's how I'm able to write books. It often takes years to write books, and you really have to be able to stick to it, even though there's no outside motivation, and you're not part of a group where you're getting that feedback all the time. You're all alone. So to have that kind of motivation to stick with it has come from my autism. So I call that super focus and super learning. So these are the gifts of the dark gift. And once I found out I had autism, I immediately looked at the academic literature. What did the medical profession, what did academic scientists have to say about autism? I wanted to fix it. I wanted to get past it. How can I improve my life? How can I learn to live with this? So I looked at what science and medicine had to say. This was the 90s, the 1990s, when I discovered this and when I did this research. And at the time, the research was terrible, useless. Like I could see they were barking up the wrong tree. Like all that, and I think this now. I know this was true. At the time, I thought this. Now looking back, it was definitely the case. Scientists in the 90s had no goddamn clue about how
Mm.
autism worked at all. They were exploring things that just were not getting at autism. So I decided I'm going to figure out how autism works. If the scientists and the doctors aren't going to help me, I'll do it myself. I've got super learning. I've got super focus. I'll just spend whatever time it takes and crack this mystery. And it took, it took decades, but just a few years ago, I finally figured out how autism works, and it's quite different than all of the mainstream scientific and medical models of it. This may not be the show where I don't think we want to spend too much time on autism. I know we're going to cover a lot of other materials too, but basically, the key to figuring out how autism works, I first had to figure out how consciousness works, how our brain, how the neurons in our brain, this physical activity, objective physical activity can produce this subjective experience of being human, of feelings, love and passion and perception. How does this happen? That needed to be solved first. Once I was able to solve that, autism fell right out of it. Autism is ultimately a consciousness problem. It's an attention problem, but it's an attention problem arising from the way consciousness works in our brain. So once I was able to figure out the physical dynamics of consciousness, the physical activity generating consciousness in our brain, it was very straightforward then to see where autism fit into that. And so that was the key to it.
Oh yeah, that's very beautiful. The way you speak about how you got this super learning or this ability to obtain and kind of just aggressively go after it just reminds me of the kind of some situations I've been in to where I'll dive into something and just aggressively get into it. It's kind of like it's all the way in or all the way out kind of for me. So I
Yes.
definitely resonate with that thought. So
A
yeah.
good example of both sides of the dark gift and the super learning, super focus is in the by the 2000s, I realized because of my autism, I'm not going to be able to hold down a job. I had had several jobs. I always ended up quitting or getting fired. I could not handle any job where I had to go to an office, any job with a boss, always ran into trouble. It's not that I'm anti-authority. It's just
Mhm.
authorities don't know what to do. I always
Right.
went into trouble with the boss would expect me to do something and I do it my own way, not their way. I wasn't doing it, to be rebellious or anything. I'm autistic. I didn't know better. It would always lead to conflict. So by the 2000s, I realized, my God, I got to support myself and I'm never going to be able to get a job. So what the hell am I going to do? So I realized I need to come up with a bundle of cash so I can like buy a place and just live off of that, and find a way. And I don't need to earn a large amount of money because I can live off of what I got. But how do I get a large, bundle of cash, very quickly? One way is drugs, but I rejected that. And so then I thought, oh, I'll go on a game show. So I used my super learning and super focus to prepare for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
I
I
was
got
going to
the
ask about
show.
that, if that had anything to do with that win that you got during Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
What
very,
year
it
was
was,
that you won?
it was
Sorry.
2007. So it's been a while now, but I got on it very deliberately to win. I wanted the $1 million. I put everything I had, all my autistic superpowers,
That's
into
amazing.
preparing for it. And I saw the $1 million question. I got there, and it was a question about Boston. I live in Boston, and I should have got it, and I panicked. I didn't prepare. I prepared my brain, my cognition for the show. I did not prepare my emotions for the show, and I got that $1 million question. And even though I figured out the answer, I just my emotions were all over the place. I was panicking. I couldn't take it, and I was like, if I walk away, I get $500,000, and I'll just do that. So it did change my life. I was able to buy a condo, and I've never had to have a job
Right.
since. I just write books, for a living since then. But
Super
I was able
amazing.
to get that off the ground without having one on Millionaire. So thank you, Dark Gift, for that.
Right. It's quite a feat there. So yeah, this gift or this dark gift of yours seems to have served you pretty well throughout your life. Then it seems as though people have their opinions and views of what things are, and that's part of the reason why I wanted you to come on, is so we can explain that maybe people have a different idea of what actually is going on here. But to go into the next topic, to human desire, I guess we can reach into some of your research that you've done on that. Can maybe we discuss some of the findings that you've had?
Sure, but the first book that I wrote was called Billion Wicked Thoughts. I wrote it with another mathematical neuroscientist I went to graduate school with at Boston University. His name is Sai Gadam. He's also my co-author on the book Journey of the Mind, which you mentioned earlier. We can talk about that one later. But the two of us wanted to understand the sexual brain. So we had just gotten our PhDs from Boston University. We wanted to write a book together, something about the mind. And the reason we settled on the sexual brain, was for two reasons. One is we wanted to explore part of the brain that had been ignored by mainstream neuroscientists. Certainly psychologists have studied sex, but people that study the hardware, the neurons, the mathematical models of the brain, they didn't touch sex. In fact, when we first came up with this idea, we talked to our colleagues, about a dozen colleagues. Every single one of them said, do not study the sexual brain. Do not do this. You'll throw away your career. And anyway, you're not going to find anything interesting anyhow. So every single 100%, that was the message they gave us, which just made us want to study it even more. We thought, oh my God, if everybody's scared, there's probably some low-hanging fruit there. I personally was interested in the sexual brain for my own reasons. I thought the only way to really understand the human mind as a whole, and even understand human consciousness, was to really understand the difference between male and female sexuality. I thought a lot of our different psychological behavior, the differences in our genders, the different psychologies of men versus women, studied a lot, talked about a lot, but ultimately it's got to be rooted at least somewhat in our sexual desires and our sexual behavior, our sexual attitudes. And it was the science on that was woefully lacking, woefully short. And I thought, okay, Sci and I have developed all these mathematical tools, these cutting edge mathematical tools to study that were designed to study more complicated parts of the brain like memory and language and perception. Why don't we just take these and apply them to the sexual brain and see what we came up with? And so that's what we did. We used as our data. Our data is what made our book very special. Is that we got a massive amount of online data. So this was right when this sort of stuff became available. In fact, we conducted our research on sexuality at a very special window of time that will never happen again, with a marvelous opportunity for getting data about sex. Why was this such a special window? For two reasons. One, it was a moment in time before all of our privacy interests came. Nowadays, you can't possibly, secure large amounts of data about people's online sexuality. All the companies that have access to that stuff they have it all locked up, and they'd be afraid of lawsuits anyway if they released it. But we got in before that happened, so we were able to acquire huge data sets from all over the place. We even had one search engine. We had a whole year's worth of search data from a search engine. We got like places like Pornhub. Pornhub shared their private proprietary data with us. We got a bunch of adult sites to do that. We got data from all over the place, which I can tell you, we wouldn't be able to get any of that stuff nowadays. The other reason our research was so unique, we had such a unique window of time was, and we didn't know this at the time, was we got to see people's sexuality in the raw. People were just coming online, so their sexual tastes and their sexual interests had been formed offline. So what we were getting was a snapshot of human sexuality across the globe. We got data from from countries all over the globe: Russia, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, England. We got sexual data from all kinds of places, and it was reflecting what people's sexual identities, sexual tastes they had developed before the internet, in the physical world. But now the entire planet gets their sexual development from the internet. Everybody looks at porn or reads erotic stories or just looks at pictures and reads things online. So everybody's sexuality now is not influenced by real physical interactions the way we have been for centuries, for millennia.
Right.
It's influenced by what we see on the computer screen. So what's happening, when we did our research, there was tremendous diversity in human sexuality. Sexual tastes were all over the place. We were originally going to call our book Rule 34, which was an early internet meme. It said the meme was Rule 34. If it exists, there's internet porn of it. And at the time, that was true. If you could think up anything, like I remember, here's two of the very first sites that we studied in our research. One was erotic falconry. So this was people that love to be nude while they're interacting with birds. And another was fart fantasy. So it was men who enjoy smelling women's farts. So just a tremendous diversity.
Which I hear they sell those online.
A tremendous diversity of human sexuality. But what's happening now, human sexuality across the planet is homogenizing. It's all converging. We're all ending up being attracted to the same things because we're all seeing the same things. Because what's happened online too, when we first started our research, if you went on the internet, there was like a million different websites with porn and erotic stories and different kinds of erotica. And tons of them were by individuals. So you have an individual webmaster who might like erotic falconry and he'd put up his website. Or you might have a guy that liked fart fantasy. That was a subscription site. He made money off of it. That's all gone. Now it's just these gigantic corporate tube sites like Pornhub and RedTube and things like that. They're owned by these giant corporations, and they have homogenized for economic reasons and for political reasons. They don't want to put up. Don't want to be fighting lawsuits all the time, so they put up stuff that they know there's not going to be a lawsuit problem and that's cheap to produce. So what happens now is almost all the porn online is like step parents and incest. It went from like 1,000 categories of porn to basically two.
Sort of like our cars or our just basically everything else in the world seems to be headed in that direction to where they've got like 2 or 3 options for you,
Exactly. So human sexuality across the planet is all becoming homogenized. I mean, there's some good aspects to that too, but probably we're losing something important by losing the
Right.
human sexuality is just changing dramatically. Our kids and our grandkids' sexuality is going to be unrecognizable to what the previous generation was, and this is something totally new in human history, and people don't really understand, aren't really studying this or talking about this, but it's profound. I mean, the whole world's converging on like a very similar kinds of sexual taste, sexual
Hmm.
expectations. It's a fascinating thing. But we managed to do our research for Billion Wicked Thoughts before that, and so by applying our mathematical neuroscience, our cutting edge techniques to this massive data set, we were able to acquire some really profound insights about human sexuality.
Yeah, I agree. And you should definitely get out there and read the book if you're interested. Like he said, it's a billion wicked thoughts. You can find it many places. I think it's on even Audible if you want to listen. So I would definitely recommend. Well, should we get into this topic of the journey of the mind? I feel like since that was where I found your ideas the most intriguing, what inspired you to do or start writing that book?
So I've always been interested in consciousness for as long as I can remember. And that was specifically what I was trying to study in graduate school. And always, all the work I've done was trying to figure out, what is happening with consciousness. It's one of the deepest, most profound scientific mysteries that's ever troubled the human race. And so I finally decided about 6 years ago that we had enough to crack consciousness. So I called up my friend Sai Gadam, who I done the Billion Wicked Thoughts book with. He's also interested in consciousness, probably not the same intensity obsessiveness as me, but he certainly is interested in too. And so we decided to do this book to try to nail down how consciousness worked, and we did. Now I should say the reason we were so confident that we'd be able to pull this off was because of the brilliant work of what I think is the greatest living scientist, and I would put him as one of the top three scientists in history, Stephen Grossberg. He figured out the mathematics of the entire brain, including mathematics for consciousness. Now, he hadn't quite figured out what's known as the hard problem, which is the problem of how do just chemicals in our brain become feelings.
Right.
He hadn't quite figured that out yet, but he had done all the math for all the other parts of the brain, and had developed some math for consciousness. So Sai and I were able to go through all of that and finally figure out what's really happening. How does consciousness really work mathematically? How does it work
Mhm.
physically? And the book Journey of the Mind is our explanation of that. When we wrote it, we thought we were making it accessible to a broad popular audience. You probably do need a little science background, a little comfort with science to read it. I'm now writing another book that's even more accessible and simpler called Consciousness, How It's Made, for anybody, even if you don't have any science or math background whatsoever. But I admit, Journey of the Mind, it will be easier to read if you have a little bit of science background and a lot of curiosity. But we try to explain in step-by-step simple terms. We build up to how consciousness works the same way life did, the same way biology did, the same way evolution did. We start with the simplest minds on Earth, the minds of archaea. These are the oldest creatures on Earth. They're like bacteria, except even smaller and older and even simpler. The bacteria is much more advanced than these archaea. So we start with the archaea minds, then we look at bacteria mind, protozoa mind, jellyfish mind, worm minds, insect minds, and we go all the way up. And we show with each new sophisticated mind, what were the new things that were added that are going to lead to consciousness. So you can see how consciousness is built up over the eons and finally finds fruit. The first creature to become conscious were fish. All the vertebrates on Earth, all the animals, fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, they're all conscious. They all have module minds. They have a certain kind of mind that produces consciousness. We humans actually are the only ones capable of self-consciousness. Our consciousness is physically and mathematically different than the consciousness of all the other creatures on Earth. This was one of the reasons scientists struggled so long to make sense of consciousness. They kind of assumed consciousness was one thing. Consciousness is many different things. And our consciousness is human consciousness is much more sophisticated than monkey consciousness and chimpanzee consciousness. And that's something else we showed in Journey of the Mind. So we tried to make it interesting and appealing, accessible to non-scientists, and to help anyone who's curious understand how this great mystery of consciousness, how it actually works.
And it sounds like you're saying around 6 years ago, there was some pivotal moment or an experience. Could you share us that experience to where at least it sounded as if you were had like around 6 years ago, you had this pivotal moment or an experience that set you off on
So there
the.
was two, I'd say in my own life, there was two pivotal, really pivotal moments in terms of understanding how consciousness worked. One was about 6 years ago. I was looking at the mathematics of Stephen Grossberg, which I studied at his department at Boston University, and so I was already familiar with his work. I'd worked with his work for years, but this time I was specifically trying to understand how could we pull consciousness out of all of this math, and it was the first time I started to see it. The math is incredibly complicated. And incredibly intricate and involved. So it's not at all easy. I often say it's more, the math of the brain, Steve Grossberg's math of the brain is more complicated than relativity and quantum physics put together. So you'll have an easier time learning the math of relativity and quantum physics than the math undergirding the entire brain and consciousness and its details. So that was the first moment, was realizing, oh, there's enough math to finally explain this. And the other pivotal moment was, I guess I had a profound personal experience, a transcendent experience that allowed me to personally experience consciousness in a whole new way. And that personal, private, transcendent experience of the glory and of consciousness kind of allowed me to look at it in a new way and connect that new vision with the math and finally just put it all together.
Well, that's beautiful. Yeah, no, it's very beautiful. The Stephen Grossberg has that book, it's Conscious Mind, Resonant Brain, I believe is the title.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's a difficult
Yeah,
book.
that one.
Even
Yeah,
though even though
I
it's
have
it's
it, but I haven't at all really gotten into it too much. Just looking at it, I could tell I need some more time in
yeah, it
these
is a
topics.
turgid, challenging
Yeah,
book. Even
just
people with
looking at it.
PhDs struggle with that book. So it's terrific, but I wouldn't recommend it to a lay audience.
Yeah,
I mean, Journey of the Mind was our attempt at taking that incredibly demanding
much better.
book and rendering it in more
Yeah,
accessible terms.
I agree 100%. So yeah, that's beautiful. The Journey of the Mind it's kind of one of the best reads I've done in a while. It just enjoyed it thoroughly. So I do appreciate your work there. And I'm sure anyone else in the audience that's listening would also. So please do go out and find this man's book and give it a read. It is it's definitely one for the times. Is there any specific practices or techniques you would recommend for in like people like me or in the crowd to embark on it, the journey of journey of the mind? Like is there anything that you would say that should lead people down this road of finding what the mind is? Any
the the number one sort of useful revelation I'd say that I found from all this study of consciousness is that our brains are designed to think tribally. That's probably not a surprise to hear. We all know that we're influenced by our tribe. Certainly, the world right now is consumed by tribalism. We have hyperpolarization in America. There's wars all over, and then certainly the world never felt so contentious and oppositional as we all dig in to our tribes. But what you discover, especially studying consciousness, is that our brains are fundamentally designed to think in communities. In every level, we're designed to have shared attention with others. And so it makes it very, 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 very difficult to think for ourselves. We get very uncomfortable if we find ourselves thinking outside the crowd. But if you can let go of the crowd and let go of your tribe, that's when you have the opportunity to really see the world in a new way, in a deeper way, in a more truthful way. Looking back now, I can see one of the big reasons that scientists have had such a hard time understanding consciousness is because of tribal reasons. That people join academia, they're afraid of what their colleagues will say if they don't follow the conventional views of these things. They're afraid of feeling embarrassed. And to crack some of these deep mysteries, you've just got to be willing to step out of your tribe, to step out of the crowd, and think for yourself, to go down roads that other people have not gone down and that might be scared to go down. And you know, I experienced this personally for the first time in a powerful way with Billy Wicked Thoughts, where, as I mentioned, we had every colleague saying, "You're not going to find anything here. Do not do it." We went there and we discovered huge amounts, just breakthrough after breakthrough on human sexuality we ended up making. So that for me was a pivotal point too. I was like, you know what? It is true. You don't need to follow the convention on these things. And even if everybody's telling you you don't know what you're doing, there's nothing there. If you think there's something there, go for it, because there probably is.
Right. Yeah, I do agree. That was kind of with I had an experience with that. It's not quite as big, but the book series Dune, I was told always to only read the first three books and don't bother with the last three. And I couldn't have been more wrong with the hearing and listening to that, because I've started the fourth, and I'm enjoying it. So it's interesting how that works,
Oh,
right?
that's wonderful.
Yeah. Um, I do notice that I
James,
have,
I see you've got a time issue. You
yeah,
want we
I
can
was,
connect, we still got time left. You want me to start a Zoom link and send it to you? Because I have a paid Zoom, so it doesn't
yeah,
have the.
that would be awesome. I didn't even realize I was going to need something like that. So this will be for my next version. I will definitely do an upgrade so that we wouldn't run into this timer issue. So what should I do? Just end this now and then wait for a,
Yeah, so
uh,
well, hang on. I was going to say I can send you a link, but the recording will be an issue.
right.
Let me think about.
Or maybe should I just do a second meeting on my end and then send it to you? And then we could just finish it out
I think it
on,
won't let you do it. You could try, but
oh,
I believe it locks you out from doing it again after you've used up the time.
well, I guess in general, I've gotten a lot of good stuff from you. So I could be happy with this little 30-minute interview if
Why don't we do a wrap up? We just got enough time. Why don't we do some kind
yeah,
of wrap up?
wrap up exactly. All right. So let's do that. All right, Mr. Ogi Ogas. I do appreciate your time. I honestly had no idea that you'd even respond back to me to get to this interview and this shared experience for you and I on the Gnostic channel here. I started this channel just with hopes to spread awareness towards ideas that I'm finding helpful for my life. And I hope that this will be helpful for others. I think that we all need some type of thing to be after, to be driven for, and sometimes you'll be lost in the mundane. And I hope that you guys will all find yourselves something out there, cooking, whatever it may be. But so I appreciate your time and all of this beautiful work you've done, all of the different research, your books out there. They are on Amazon. You can find them basically everywhere, correct, Mr. Ogi?
Yes, every bookstore, Amazon, Apple, Google Play.
Right. Yeah. It's a wonderful world right now, but then they keep like you said, they're homogenizing things. It seems as if there's some like weirdness with the internet being a a dark gift, right? You've got this gift and it can be beautiful, and then at the same time it brings along some darkness, and we just need to learn how to
That's life.
navigate. Right.
Life will
Yeah.
always it's a mix of
Right.
the light and the dark, and that's just it will always be that way. And
Yeah. Well,
celebrate it.
exactly. Yeah, we should find time to celebrate and stop being so down on ourselves, and maybe yes, just start smiling, go out and enjoy your day.
Absolutely.
But I
Well,
appreciate
it's
it
a beautiful
again.
place, even
Yeah.
now.
But anything else you'd like to leave with the guests before we head out?
No, just very happy to be here, and
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
wish you
yeah,
the very best with your Gnostic channel, James.
thank you, sir. Yeah, it's the Gnostic Chef here, and we are going to sign out with Mr. Dr. Ogi Ogas. And thank you again. We shall maybe talk again. I'm not sure if you'll have time, but I'll email you to see if we can maybe
Yeah, I'd be happy
finish
to
up
come
some
back
of these
sometime.
ideas.
Sure.
All right. All right. Thank you, sir.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.